Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And welcome to our yarn today, Yarning with Mother Earth, Caring for Country for Raising Peace. My name's Michelle Aleksandrovics Lovegrove. I'd like to start our yarn today by acknowledging the traditional owners of all of the lands that we're on today. And I know that people are in many different places on this panel today. I'm giving respect to our elders and our ancestors, past and present, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, First Nations peoples, and indeed all elders who are here today on the panel or being with us to view what people have to say today and watching from different lands. We've got some deadly people for Yarning with Mother Earth this afternoon. With us at the moment is Dr. Poelina. Now, Anne is an active community leader and a rights activist. She's a human and earth rights advocate, a filmmaker, and a very well-respected academic researcher. And Anne will speak more about the work that she does and what drives her throughout the afternoon. And Craig Cromelin. Now, what I've got here on my little notes, I've got to say is I've got Craig Cromelin, one of the world's wise people. And Craig, I've known for some years. He's dedicated a lot of his life to land rights and to a whole heap of other things as well, which he'll be talking about us with as well. We've got a couple of other people yet to come in. Technology is thwarting us somewhat. Bruce Schillingsworth, who's an artist and rights activist. He works with water and our river systems, and he heads a campaign called Water for Rivers. And Victor Steffensen. So Victor's quite well known these days for his very excellent work in cultural burning for land management and the reciprocal relationship between land and people, animals, and plants, all of us who are sustained by country. And he's a co-founder of the Fire Sticks Alliance. So I guess without further ado, so that we can really have an understanding and learn more about some of our panelists, and if you wouldn't mind, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your work?
Yeah, first of all, so I'm just acknowledging that I'm in Broome. Broome's my home, but this is the traditional lands of the Jukan and the Yaru people. When I introduce myself, I go, which means I am a woman who belongs to the Fitzroy River, the Martuwarra in the Kimberley region of Western Australia. So from that perspective, I live by a law of obligation to protect and promote my ancestral river's right to not only live, but the right for it to live and flow. So yeah, so I'm up in the Kimberley. We're learning amazing things from all the mob in the Barker. I've got family in the Barker as well. On the other side of my family are direct descendants down there in the with the Barkenji, and I won't rattle off the names because you'll know who I am. But yeah, it's wonderful to be here. Most of all, I really want to thank the non-Indigenous people who are here with us today. We cannot do this work without you. We have to walk together, and you know, the conversations that have just been happening on the next prior to this was just absolutely amazing. We have a plan, we have a vision, and we all need to walk together in peace and harmony. And the world is actually trying to look at how we declare peace with Indigenous people across this nation and across the world. So it's time to create peace with Indigenous people and with nature, but most importantly, our living river systems, our living waters. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But we as Indigenous people, we lived on a land of peace here in the Kimberley. In 1687, we had an Italian map maker who came to the Kimberleys, and he painted this beautiful map, said land of peace. So we are amazing diplomats. We are the first everything, the first scientists, the first farmers, the first engineers, the first architects. And this ancient wisdom is coming into frame the way we need to move forward as a nation. So yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity to be here. And all of us are working very hard and in this space. And it is today about how do we create peace with Mother Earth? How do we look at the ancient wisdom of Indigenous people who are the oldest living culture in the world and bring all that knowledge and that wisdom into not only right-sizing our nation, but right-sizing the planet. So thank you, Michelle and Craig, and we'll share a little bit more a bit later. But this is the person and the people and the whole place this is about Mother Earth. And just before moving there, Extinction Rebellion, they're doing fantastic work. I mean, I don't describe myself as an activist. I describe myself as an actionist, because I'm really, really looking at not just dialogue for dialogue's sake, but for transforming the systems that we see that have brought us to climate chaos. So from that perspective, what I'm saying is that the Extinction Rebellion people say that if we as human beings are so stupid that we befall our own demise, Mother Earth is powerful. She will heal herself and restore herself. And I quickly say she will be lonely without the vibrations of human beings. So from that perspective, Indigenous people in this land are deeply connected to the land. You as non-Indigenous people, your DNA is now embedded in this cultural landscape. We know you are a part of it. We want you to belong, and we want you to come on the truth-telling and the healing with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Craig, would you mind telling us a bit about yourself?
I will. Geez, what a hard act to follow there. And thank you so much for your passion, sister, and your wisdom and your ability to articulate in such a way that will resonate with anyone, regardless of their background. Just for way of introduction for myself, first of all, I better acknowledge that I'm currently on Wiradjuri country here in the shadow of Kunabula, which is Mount Canobolas. I'm actually in the office of the Orange Local Aboriginal Land Council, where I work. So I want to just acknowledge country, acknowledge that I'm here working with such a fantastic organisation. Who am I? Well, I'm from Martuwarra, a little Aboriginal community which is in central New South Wales. My mum, my grandchildren, ex-partner, cousins, friends still live at Martuwarra. I've moved around for purposes to keep myself active and employed. I was a councillor with the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council from between 2007 to 2019 in December. I decided after 3 4-year terms as a councillor that it was time to step aside, let others step into that role, and for myself go down another path, learn other things in life. I've spent over 35 years of my life. I'm only 57 this year. So I've spent a fair bit of my time since I was 21 in the world of governance, learning, experiencing things, having no real idea what I was doing, but doing it for the right reasons, because we needed to give ourselves the best opportunities we can in my little community. Took me broader than that. And along the way, I've learned a lot about, I guess, the world that we live in. And over time, my exposures to things that's happened in life, good, bad, and indifferent, have certainly made me more wiser about things. I'm someone who, because of a loss of a brother who died of a skin cancer, there were 2 things that happened with him that made me change a lot of my perspective. He died of a melanoma that was on this shoulder, just at the back, fair skin like I am. But there were 2 things. At the stage, he was bedridden, couldn't walk, and we had to keep him in a fairly moderated environment, meaning that if he got a cold, he would have brought on his death sooner. But he wanted to go outside. It was freezing cold. It was wintertime down in Victoria, near Mildura. And he wanted us to take him outside. When he went out, he sat there and he looked out in the distance, and I could just see him observing his surrounds, and there was a beautiful sunset. Now, to all of us, to anyone that's going to wake up tomorrow and the next day and the next day, what does a sunset mean to you? But if it's going to be your last, what a wonderful thing to take with you to the other side. There was another a couple of days after he insisted we take him outside again, despite our protest. We took him outside, and as soon as we went outside, he come from out of this false environment, and he felt the cool breeze on his face, and I just observed him close his eyes and allowed that fresh, cool breeze to come over him. Again, taking no more interest in it, apart from, I think, why would that interest anyone? So out of it, I just gathered that, there are some simple things in life's simple pleasures, things we take for granted, like the rivers, the earth, nature in itself. And I've learnt through my photography to capture just those simple little things, and it's taught me a hell of a lot about myself, about my world that I live in, and how we need to look at it very differently. And I share that a lot of the times with people that are like-minded, that like looking at what it is. And I've learned so much about so many things that I just took for granted. A butterfly, a dragonfly, all of these things. A snake, I used to be fearful of snakes. I love them. I think they're beautiful. Although I give them a fair bit of respect and a wide berth, but I just have learnt some stuff. Just quickly, Michelle, without taking up too much time, as a councillor, when I was with New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, I remember picking up a piece of legislation, which is the New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Act. And I looked at a section and it said, Aboriginal people are primary determinants over what is of significance to them in terms of our culture and heritage. And I thought, well, geez, this is out of my league. I don't understand what that means. So there was a lawyer sitting right alongside me. I said, can you explain what this means? She said, as a primary determinant, you're one of the most important, but you're not the only. I said, but our Aboriginal culture and heritage, that's ours. They said, well, it isn't. It belongs to the Crown. So what we try to do is introduce legislation that puts Aboriginal people in control of our own culture and heritage, while we were making decisions. And we're not talking about just the earth, we're talking about the skies, the waters, and all of that sort of stuff as well. Access to our stories, our songlines, all of those things. Recently, most recently, there were the droughts that we had in the system, and actually that was only 2019, 2018, when it was fairly dry. I know we only got, because I was working here in Orange last year when the drought really started to break. But all of a sudden, the conversation around water, our rivers, our creeks, and that have stopped or they're dried up because there's an abundance of water. We've had good rainfall, but that won't last. People will start draining them again, and we'll be back to where we was having this conversation and up in arms about stuff. We've got to make sure that these conversations that are out there that we've had before don't drop off the perch, don't fall by the wayside. And I know there are others that are very vocal in making sure that they don't. And I think as whoever's sitting out there and listening, we've got to make sure that whatever's happening with our water systems, that and I see Bruce there, we've got to make sure they never drop off the conversation, that we keep them at the forefront all the way along. I've got children that live out at the Menindee Lakes out there, and it's beautiful now. You go back to when it was bone dry, everyone was up in arms, but all of a sudden that conversation dropped. So we've got to make sure that we keep Mother Earth, caring for country, right at the forefront of everything. That just because things have changed and they might be for the better now, such as our climate, our country, you know, it'll change, and then we'll back to where we was. So we don't want it to drop by the wayside. I think I'll leave it at that, Michelle, and I'll leave you to ask the other panelists members to bid in. But I'm very honoured and privileged to be sharing this conversation with some very influential and very inspiring people. And I'm sure the next person that we've got coming up is going to be absolutely that. So thank you.
Thanks, Craig. And welcome, Bruce. So Bruce Schillingsworth, hi, how are you? Gave you a little intro before, Uncle. If you are okay to tell us a little bit more about yourself and some of the work that you're doing as we're getting into the yarn today, that'll be deadly. Thank you.
Yama, everyone. My name's Bruce Shillingsworth. I'm a Muruwari Budjiti man from northwestern New South Wales. From a little town called Warrwa, where the Darling River starts. We call the Darling River and the Murray the Barker now. It's the Aboriginal name of the Barkindji people, where most of my people's family have lived. Look, Mother Earth is so important. I mean, just like the previous people have been speaking about why it's so important to us. And I think it's so important to us because we are the people of the land. We are the First Nation people. We are the Indigenous people that lived on our land for thousands and thousands of years. And I want to acknowledge that and acknowledge my 500 plus nations across this big continent of ours and the 250 plus language groups that kept this country the way it was and for thousands of years. But over the last 250 plus years, I think we see a big change on our land and our people and the environment. Look, Mother Earth is speaking. Mother Earth is speaking. It's speaking not just to First Nation people, it's speaking to non-Indigenous people as well. Like the previous speaker said, we only live on one planet. There's nowhere else to go. So I think it's time that we need to focus back on our Mother Earth and our environment and the world we live in, which is so important. And that has sustained us for many, many of years. And I think we need to focus on that. The Murray-Darling, our river, the Barker, as you see, we had lots of problems over the last 10 or 15 years with the droughts and becoming dry. I want to tell you a story about my mother. My mother died 1 year short of her 101 birthday. Mum lived on those rivers. She camped on those rivers. We lived on those rivers and we survived off the rivers, and the environment for our food has sustained us. Mum walked the country. She covered the many rivers. She covered many kilometres walking, and her footprints are still on the land. But she lived and survived. She knew what to eat. She knew her medicinal medicine. And that's what made her live for so long, with her elder brothers and sisters, and my grandmother that lived till over 100 as well. How old people have lived on the land and benefit and survived very healthy. Look what's happened to my people over the last 10 or 15 years. Look what's happening to the non-Indigenous people that are living on the land, the farmers. We've all been affected. We've got to look at the clearing of the land, the destructions and the devastation that's going on, the mining, the fracking. All those things are contributing to our death, of our death as humans on this planet. Capitalism and the big corporates are controlling the world that are killing our environment and that are killing the people. Like I said, my mother lived on the land for many of years. It's an example for us and for many. It's a great story that should be told. We're only young compared to her age and her people at the time. But I think, giving you an example of the river, when the river dries up, the water creatures, which is our totems, they die and they come extinct. When we kill our totems and our totems die, we die. Because that's where our stories are, that's where our laws are. LAW and LORE. And that's a part of our identity and who we are. And I think the non-Indigenous people in the world needs to know the knowledge and the wisdom that our people have had and still have, and to contribute to the world solution and the world issue that faced us. So I believe that First Nation people is a part of the answer. They're a part of our solution today, only because we live so close to Mother Earth, our mother, and rely on her for our survival. And I think not just here, but right across our continent of Australia, we see the same issues. You know, people are there talking about it and telling us how they're affecting their communities. Our river, the Murray-Darling, runs through the 4 states, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia. 40+ nation groups lives along the river. What happens if our rivers disappear and our environment become affected and been destroyed? Those 40 nations will be destroyed and they'll disappear. The people will disappear and the animals and the creatures will disappear. Australia has a record of the most extinct animals in the world. Why? Because we're not listening. We're not listening to First Nation people. Our laws and legislations need to change. The lawmakers of this country need to sit down with us, First Nation people, and start talking about truth-telling and about to be educated of what's happening to Mother Earth. If this doesn't happen in the next 20 or 30 years, you can say goodbye. Like I said, we've come to a fork in the road. There's only 2 roads left. One road to death and destruction, the other is to life and survival. We will not survive without Mother Earth. We will not survive without our environment, our rivers, our waterways, our oceans, our trees, and everything that the great Creator has given us. We've got to go back to the old ways of doing things like our people have done for thousands of years, and take from that the great things that we can now contribute to the world today. I think we have a great challenge ahead of us. We're all on a journey. And that journey is a survival for the human race. That journey is about our children. It's about my children. It's about your children and their future generation. Stop the clearing of the land, stop the mining, stop the fracking, stop the destruction, and stop the corporate from controlling things that affect our lives. We tell the government and the leaders of this country and the world to now listen to what First Nations people are telling you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, a lot of very interesting points and some powerful statements there, and some truths, and they're hard to listen to. Yeah, they're hard to listen to, but it's not just about, in my opinion, saying I support these things. It's about actually taking whatever action we all can as individuals to do so. So with that, I'd like to have a look and share a video with you that Anne has very kindly made available to us. So our the IT support today, Fergus. I can see you there, Fergus, that you're online. There's a video. I'm sure it's going to engender a lot more discussion. So this video is called Yungorugu, and Fergus, if you could play that for us, that'd be great. Thank you. want to ask you a couple of questions about that, Anne, but Craig, Bruce, I don't know if either of you have seen that video before. Have you got some thoughts on what you just saw?
That's the first time I've seen it, but that echoes exactly what Bruce was saying, and so we're each saying it in our own different part of the country, but the message is still the same. And I was actually only just writing down some notes that, if ever I get the conversation, is how do we, it's and again, going back to the point, in good times, well, what people would classify as good times is, when there's plentiful of water for rivers and they're swollen and the lakes are filled, the billabongs are full, then all of a sudden it drops off the perch. No one wants to have a conversation about it. And it's then in those times when other things are happening, you get I get very worried about, what are government up to? And it's usually to the detriment of the systems and to the Aboriginal people that have lived on it. And, if COVID, for as bad as it's been impacting on people, what it's highlighted is Aboriginal people, especially in New South Wales, and it's no different elsewhere, their country, they live in country. To others, that are in the cities and other places like that, they don't understand. But if you're born from a place, that's your home. And whereas a farmer, they buy a farm, it's a thing. It's yes, they live it, they'll work it, and sometimes they'll do mass clearing, but they can sell up anytime and they can move away. So wherever they go is their home. That's not the same for us. Home is where we come from. It's in our heart. It's in our veins. It's part of our songline, our destiny. So that was powerful. I enjoyed it. Can I just say quickly to Bruce, brother, thank you for that speak you gave there earlier. That was so powerful. I could see why a lot of people engage you to be there. You have a presence that just demands people to sit up and take notice. So thank you very much for what you said today. But yeah, that's what I've just got to offer there, Michelle.
Oh, better unmute myself. Bruce, you got a couple of thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Look, thanks, panel. Thank everyone for having me once again. Look, I think it's a time now in history. I always say it's a time now. It's a gathering of the people. It's a gathering of a modern day corroboree. That corroboree exists of all people, of all nations, of all backgrounds, of all race. And I think that's the journey we're all on. That's the road that we want to take. Look, I think, and thanks everyone for being a part of this. We're a part of a revelation now that's happening. We're a part of a revolution that are now taking place. As you say, Mother Earth speaks through us as First Nation people. Mother Earth is crying out. The extreme weathers, the flooding, the droughts, all those things have now affected all of us. But with First Nation people, we feel the brunt. We feel the brunt because we live on the land, we're people of the land. And I think it's our challenge now is to come together and make the proper policies and the laws are set in place that'll make sure that our environment, Mother Earth, and humans stay alive and survive for another, 80,000 years.
Yep. And
I think we can do it. Power to the people. I believe that the people will make a difference and wear it. And I say, this is time. It is time.
Thank you. Thanks, Bruce. And could you just have a chat with us about this film, but about the issues that have sent you down the path that you were on, which I know you've been on for a long time, but yeah.
You're born into it. It's not a choice, it's a destiny.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I mentioned that when I introduced myself, I said, Ngayo I Martuwarra Manan, which means I am a woman who belongs to the Fitzroy River, the Martuwarra. And I talked about that we have a law of obligation. We are bound by a law of obligation, which is a law of the land, a law of the river, not of man. So that's what keeps me going. I just wanted to go back because earlier I sat on the Uluru panel and I was very, very taken by this story. I have not been too heavily involved in it, but basically the Sydney Peace Prize is a recognition that Indigenous people are coming with a declaration of peace to our fellow Australians. So it's very, very important that we understand that we are coming as peacemakers, as diplomats, saying this ancient wisdom that we have is so necessary for right-sizing the planet. So one of the big questions that my old people say to me when we talk about a treaty process is, how can we have peace with Indigenous people and Mother Earth when we are still being invaded and our lands and waters and people are facing ecocide and genocide? So it's a very, very important question that we need to put on the table. What I'm saying is that my people really believe in a just energy transition. We care about people working in oil and gas. We care about these families, these Australian families. How do we invest and make that transition? And I just about collapsed the other day, yesterday, I think it is. It sounds like a year ago, but that we have spent $90 billion on nuclear submarines to make ourselves really declare war against China. So we are getting mixed messages as Indigenous people. We are getting mixed messages as our nation that what is government doing? Because it is up to the people, and this is the journey of the Uluru Statement. It is up to each individual Australian to bond with this land because you are part of it. Your DNA is embedded in this landscape. We need you to stand with us. So what I'm saying is that one of the things with the Uluru Statement is the practicality and the impacts of a fair go. And the poem that I wrote there is saying that we all need a fair go. Indigenous people, our freedom is, your freedom is very much dependent on our freedom, and together we need to walk together. So this is about peacemaking. It is about showing you the wisdom of Indigenous people. And as I said, from every science background that you can think of, we are the first scientists, the first engineers, the first architects, the dancers who come. So what I'm finding as a scientist, and I'm multidisciplinary trained, is that we really are testosteroned out on science. Seriously, we need a different way to bring the people with us. And that's why I find ceremony, films, stories are a great way to hook that emotional hook on you, to see that we are not othering you. We want you to come on the journey to heal our lands, our living waters. We need you to wake up the snake, as my people call it, wake up the consciousness of the people and bring you on the journey, because the freedom of our nation is depending on all of us standing together. So from that perspective, we need a way of how do we move forward. I believe the Uluru Statement is a fantastic way. We've got another document on the table to look at what we will do with the practicalities, but I'm saying people in the region, we as Indigenous people, we come from place-based governance. The laws of the land are embedded in country and the living water systems. So I'm hoping that this little conversation that you're having with Colin, Bruce and I and Michelle is a way to stimulate yourself and your mind and your thinking that it's going to take all of us to right-size the planet. We are planetary citizens. We have an obligation to Mother Earth to stop misogynizing her. And so what I'm saying, it's time to raise up. It's time to hold the love that we have for each other as peacemakers, as diplomats. And as I said earlier, thank you all, you non-Indigenous people, for being on the platform today, because we can't do this without you. We need people power. We need to be able to shift in a way what's happening in government and bring you on the journey with us. Your freedom is dependent on the freedom of us, but most importantly, I am advocating for the river's right to not just live, but to live in flow. So, you know, this has been a great way. We have solutions, we have models of governance that we can bring into this modern way of working together. And what I'm saying is that we can do this, we must do it. And I'm very, very fearful that we don't have the time that we think we have. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, we've got certainly a number of rivers represented here. If you like, I'm as a Ngarringeri woman, you know, the picture you see behind me is of the wetlands at Lake Albert, which is down near Rauken, is my home country, towards the mouth of the Murray. And you know, Craig and Bruce, I'm sure that you would remember and perhaps even participated in a number of years ago. I think it was like in 2010 we did the first one. Ringballen, my cousin Moogie Sumner danced with a troupe from the top of the Murray, like from Queensland all the way down to the mouth of the Murray, which is where we're from, because at that time the Coorong River was closing up. We had to get sand dredgers in to physically dredge the river because the mouth was very, very close to closing, and it was a very, very desperate time, because once that mouth closed, everything further north was going to suffer. But what was happening, we were suffering because of everything that was happening further north and going up into Queensland. So I don't know, do any of you, do you remember the Ringballen? It's been performed twice, I think maybe 3 times, and joining with the different Aboriginal nation groups down the Murray River. I saw in someone's observation in the chat that's flowing along on the right there, talking about some type of ceremony, which is what Ringballen means, to bring people together. Do you think that this is something that could assist? Because I do think a lot of people have an academic care for this, but we need to be practical.
Look, can I say in 2019, you know, after the rivers went dry, where the corroboree are gathering on the rivers. We went to 5 locations: Walgett, Warrwa, Burke, Wilkenya, and finished up in Menindee. And Brother Mookie was a part of that. He came up from your country. I remember the previous years as well. We participated when he came down through Warrwa there at the fish traps in Warrwa. We had the little corroboree there as well. But I think with these gatherings, it's a gathering of, like I said, all people now, and non-Indigenous people need to get involved. I mean, we're planning on organising another Yamagana corroboree next year. And what we were set up to do is bring the non-Indigenous people out on the rivers and sit with them, so they can sit with the elders, listen to those voices that you know, are not been heard, and listen to a lot of the issues and about Mother Earth. And I think that's a great a way of educating them about that as well. I think more gathering on the rivers, more gathering at these special, you know, ceremonial places, natural places that are very special to First Nations people, and I think we need to do more of it.
I would wholeheartedly agree with all of that, Michelle, and thank you, Anne. That was so inspiring what you were talking about. Wow, I feel so underwhelmed sitting at the table with these 2 special, especially inspiring speakers that are here. But I think you're absolutely right. Again, it comes back to my point. I was involved. I went to the Wilkenya protest when the rivers were more or less bone dry. But we seem to do it when it, you know, the issues are glaringly obvious.
Yeah.
We're in a boom time, or a good time, because of all of the rains that's been around. Now's the very time that we should be doing all of this, so that we make sure that our waters are sustained for time immemorial, like they were before that first boat people come here. We've got to make sure that it starts to get back to that process again. Because I remember as a kid living at Murrum Bridge, where the Lachlan River, you know, flows right past our community. When I was a kid, you used to go and swim in that river. I could see the bottom of the river. Why is that? Because it was clean. We had natural filtration systems in there. White men then decided that they wanted to get rid of all of the river weeds and bring in all of these other introduced species. You cannot put your hand in there any less than the length of a ruler. you can't even see your hand in it. So we've got to get back to that system. They're not hard, they're not difficult, but we just got to make sure that we do it in good times rather than waiting for all of the bad stuff to happen before we start jumping up in arms.
One of the things I've found, though, and particularly with, your work, Bruce, over time, your work, Anne, as well, is that there are so many layers of bureaucracy and administration that is surrounding us as First Nations people, brought upon us by different authorities and organisations and the governments, et cetera, and we talk about us all sort of being together, and it's for all of us. Quote from your film there, and it's their life that they must save. So it's not only First Nations people, it's beholden on everybody.
Absolutely.
How can we cut through that bureaucracy, or must we work with it?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that we're dealing with complexity. So we need collective wisdom. We need the science, we need the legal pluralism, we need the artists, we need the singers, we need the song tellers. This is about complexity, and we need collective wisdom. So, this is what I'm saying in terms of a lot of the dream that I have in terms of where we should be going back to is place-based governance, bioregionalism. How do we within the regions work together with our fellow Australians to look at how we deal with complexity? So many people may not be aware on the Zoom link today, but our nation has been mapped out into bioregions. When you look at the Kimberley, particularly the Fitzroy River catchment, what we have is a bioregion. I don't go for the name, but I go for the concept, which is Dampier lands, where it connects freshwater people to saltwater people, and it covers a catchment based on what we believe as Indigenous people, land, water, people being intrinsically entwined. So I think it's really about how do we get the practicality of the Uluru Statement? How do we look at our treaty in terms of its regional context? How do we as a nation stand together in solidarity around this frame? Because seriously, we are dealing with complexity. I said a little while ago that we're testosterone out on science. So we need the songs, we need the dance, we need the ceremony. Country is alive. It holds memory. The vibrations of humans on the land will ignite energy systems that are profound and can help transform our world. So what we're saying is that come with us on a leap of faith, get to know where you live, learn about the Yarra, learn about the Coorong Lakes, learn about the Derribul Yarragon and the Swan River, get to know your country, feel it, hear it, be with it, be a part of it, come on the journey with us. And we need to really go back to the original thinking that we had in this nation of place-based governance connected by songlines through trade, through ceremony, through reciprocity. So this is still alive. It's in the landscape. We need to evoke it. We need ceremony. And I think the story you just shared with me about the powerful way to do ceremony all down the Murray-Darling Basin, the country remembers that because it's holding that memory. We need to make it alive again in 2021, 22, moving forward. The people need to rise up. They need to come with us. They need to be with us on the journey, because this is not just about Indigenous people being free. It is about the nation being free. And one day when we grow up and we get really, really clever, we may move towards a just republic. So yeah, it's all in the time. We have to dream a new dream. We're living in a nightmare. Let's dream a dream together. Let's walk together. Let's make sure we have ceremony to evoke the memory of country and our living water systems. We are learning so much from the Baka, seriously. We are learning, we are hearing, we are sharing the stories of their citizen tribunal that was held a couple of years ago, the cries of the people. We hear that. You know, Badger Bates says, don't let them start to take it, because once you do, you can't stop. So we are learning from the Baka. As I said, my husband is Barkindji. My family, I've got family over there. I've got an uncle in a hospital right now in Warrwa and Burke and Dubbo, and it's just crazy. So we need to share our stories. We need to share our songlines. We need to evoke the memory of the land, because the land is alive and it is waiting for all of us to strengthen our relationship and move forward in a spirit of reconciliation, truth-telling, but wisdom keeping and wisdom making. And as I said, this is about transformational change. It's about the people mobilizing because wherever we look, we've got corruption, collusion in government. It's time for the people. As I said, we have a saying, which I will finish on this point: wake up the snake. Wake up the consciousness of all people and bring them with us. And if seriously, with the caliber of intellectual people we have, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, if we can't right-size our nation within 10 years, I don't know where we're going to go. But I have hope. We are building a coalition of hope. We are putting it out there to say that Indigenous people have declared peace. Let's move forward in a spirit of cooperation and trust, and let's make sure we keep our rivers alive, living, and free flowing.
Wow.
You partly answered this, Anne, but I'm looking at a question here from Ben in the comments and questions. And I it's a simple answer, but we may need to give some more detailed ones. How can we celebrate Mother Earth in the city as well? Because that's where the majority of people live.
Oh, cities are so important. I think one of the things is hold on to your public parklands. They seem to be being swallowed up by urbanisation. The rivers are running through the Yarra runs through Melbourne. You know what I mean? These waterways are there, they're alive. Just find a place where you can sit and connect with country, talk to country. Country will talk back to you. You create a relationship. We need to move from survivalist to relationist thinking, as Mary Graham really rightly points out. Get to build a relationship with where you are. It is place-based governance. The land is alive. It holds memory. Your DNA as fellow Australians is embedded in this cultural landscape. Be a part of it. Get to feel it. Get to know it. Get to become it. Thank you.
What are your thoughts, Bruce, on that? And I guess I'm still on the city thing just for a minute, because I think, there are a lot of people who can change or alter the way they live if they can understand how they can do it in a city.
Look, we can do it. I mean, a lot of the non-Indigenous people, I think, got to get behind the First Nations in those communities, or the First Nation communities that are now living in those cities. Look, get behind them, support them, whatever they want to do. They need people support in getting their land back, support in changing the laws, support in everything. And there's a lot of people here that I'm in Sydney at the moment, and there's a lot of First Nation people here, and a lot of clan groups that need support. Get behind them, and I think support them in everything they do. And this building, it's from building from the inside, I think. I mean, a lot of, like I said, Anne said, a lot of parks, a lot of natural environment here that we need to keep and we need to protect. I mean, there's sites as well, sacred sites, special sites here in Sydney that we need to start protecting. We need to get behind our leaders, the people that we vote for, to make sure that these things are protected.
I'm seeing a question here from someone in Sydney. I think it's Angie. She says, I now live at Coogee. I'm desperate to know about the area, the sea, the cliffs, the landscape. I want to invoke country here. I want to hear and learn the stories of the country. Same for Sydney Harbour, same for Georges River, same for Parramatta River. My first thought for you, Angie, is it's not hard to learn. It's not hard for you to learn. If you just heard what Anne said, it's up to you. And it's not just about reading about things. It's about experiencing where you are and going to those places and sitting and being in the first instance. And, the water, the country will talk to you. It will talk to you, 100%.
And I think it's also worthwhile noting that there are organisations like the land councils that are there, metropolitan land councils, the Laparoos and other land councils that are around, that people can certainly seek them out, and they'd be more than happy to be able to steer them in the right direction and give them as much information as possible. And I'm sure there are other organisations that are around as well, but there is existing ones that they just tap into any time they need to do that. And it's interesting. Some years ago, we had a lot of affluent people in the northern part of Sydney. They wanted to contribute to Aboriginal programs, but they said, we don't know how to talk to Aboriginal people. I said, my God, that sounds so ridiculous that you can't talk to anyone. I said, we don't know who to talk to. I said, surely ring up get onto your local directory. This was well before I got involved with New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council, but it's like it's a too hard basket. It's not that hard, and Aboriginal people ain't that difficult to talk to. All you got to do is get into the directories, find out, look up an Aboriginal Land Council if there's one in your particular region. If not, there'll be someone that you can certainly do. So maybe as a part of this process, Michelle and the organisers is, if people are looking at who to connect with, we may be able to give them some sort of directory of if they ask from where they are, and we might be able to pass them some information on organisations that they can deliberately go and seek information.
We do have Nathan Moran, I'm seeing there, who's the CEO of Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, has made an offer already in the comments. He said, so for Georges Cook, Sydney Harbour, Lane Cove, Hawkesbury Rivers, cultural ecological knowledge, there's a very extensive website available. Fellows, go there, find Metro Lauk, find another local Aboriginal Land Council, have a look. So an offer's already been made there as well. And I know all states don't have those types of land. I mean, in South Australia, but my home, we don't have land councils, but we do have different regional authorities, our Ngarringeri Regional Authority, etc. So it's not hard to find an Aboriginal organisation, at the very least, who can help point you in the right direction. Bruce, can I ask you, with in your part of the state and with the work that you do, if someone came and said, look, I want to help you, Bruce, I want to do something, what can I do? In terms of something specific, what could they do? Oh, you're on mute, Bruce. Yeah.
There's lots of stuff that we can do. I mean, out in our community on the rivers, I mean, a lot of the community there are still waiting for water tanks. When it rains, we need to store water. We also need filter system that'll filter the water to make it clean. And that's a big job. I mean, proper water still need to get to our communities, all that sort of stuff. Working with councils, working with Shire across the region is an old big job. And I think it's about putting plants and that, putting the right environment back the way it was too. I mean, we're losing a lot of our big red river gums. I think we need to get out there and start planting those trees, put back in our medicinal use, stop clearing of the land, stop all the mining and the fracking and all that sorts of stuff. I mean, those are all the things that we need to do to be able to save our lives and to be able to survive. I think, there's lots of groups that you can join, lots of environment group. Look, get behind that, get out there, talk to our communities and see what they need and what they want. I think just supporting them from the outside is great. I think we need to work with those communities, and communities will start making their decision for what they need to do. And I think it's just about getting there and supporting them in any way we can. And look, there's a lot of First Nation, a lot of events that happen throughout the years, throughout our year on the calendar. Get involved in a lot of those stuff too as well. I think it's time that we need to bring that together right across the state.
What about in Broome, in your part of the world, Anne? If anyone wanted to actually commit to doing some practical work?
Yeah, look, I put my details there for the Martuwarra Fitzroy River Council. On the 26th of September is World Rivers Day. We've got a big event lined up for that, so I'm hoping people will subscribe to Martuwarra Fitzroy River Council, martuwarrafitzroyriver.org. So I'm hoping that members will have a look at this. But yeah, I also wanted to give a plug and just to remind the viewers that next year in Sydney is the Biennale, and the focus of the Biennale in Sydney is rivers. So it's very, very important that those of you that are creative and artistic and live in Sydney and live close to Sydney, or who can put a voice of rivers into the Biennale, that would be a wonderful thing to happen. So yeah, lots of good things. 26th of September, World Rivers Day. watch Martuwarra Fitzroy River Council, because we've got a beautiful documentary film and songlines that we're going to share with the world. So yeah, that's the best place. Yeah, working with so many young people, which is really great, because sometimes we need something new and creative. So yeah, come along, join the Martuwarra Fitzroy River. There's global dialogue happening. There's love in the air, and there's a spirit of goodwill. And I think we're all doing our best as decent, good and fair human beings.
I think, you know, with many areas still being in some type of lockdown or having COVID restrictions at the moment, you know, there is still a lot you can do. And we've got the internet, got Google or Bing or whatever search engine you use to actually find organisations, find people that's going to suit you. Some people are going to be, you know, more research minded. Some are more academic minded. Some want to get out on country. I would actually say, and Craig, if you can talk to this would be great. Is that I think everybody should get on country, and you can get on country in the city. You know, there are still green spaces. I mean, I'm in Western Sydney at the moment, and I've got the Parramatta River not far from me, poor love, you know, with what she is having to go through all the time, you know, but still, I'm still blessed I can, because I'm a river person. I can be near a river. But Craig, can you maybe talk to us a bit about that, about the benefits of being on country? And what I'm harking to is, you know, with your own personal work, with documenting country, in other words, taking photos.
Yeah, look, I mean, what started off as one thing that, because of a life experience and mostly around my brother, it's now taken me on a wonderful journey. And there's so much to enjoy about life out there. But I also see in a way, like as a young fellow growing up, I used to take for granted budgerigars. We used to have budgerigars by the thousands. Nowadays, if I wanted to try and find budgerigars, they're as rare as hen's teeth, and you can only but understand that the stuff that Brother Bruce there were talking about with clearing, massive clearing, their habitat is being destroyed. And the things, so whenever I see one now, I celebrate them, very different to when I was growing up, when they were just natural part of our everyday existence, pretty much. But getting out in country, yeah, look, I remember when I used to spend a lot of time in Parramatta or Parramatta there, going to the river and going to places like there's the Lake Parramatta, is that what it's called, Michelle, there? I didn't even realise there was a lake system there, but there is a little lake. And I was overwhelmed by this beautiful little pocket of nature that's in this great big bustling city that is Parramatta, and this little beautiful pocket of natural paradise is there. And so people just need to get out and look, but also learn and understand about where it is that you are. And again, if you can, try and connect with organisations that are out there. I noticed one person said, I've tried to get in touch with a particular land council. Well, maybe Michelle, without putting you on the spot, Michelle worked for the New South Wales Aboriginal Land Council. She may be able to assist you in trying to connect you to one of those, for that person that said they couldn't get in touch with a particular land council. But yeah, Land Council is just one organisation. There are other organisations that you can link with as well, where people would be only too happy, I'm sure, to try and point you in the right direction. And if they themselves are not familiar with the country where they're living and working in. But for me, it's wonderful. Like when I first come here to Orange, I learnt the story of Warrwa, and for those who don't know what Warrwa is, Mount Panorama. and the connection between Walu and Kunabulu, which is Mount Canobolas. They're brothers. And there's a third brother, and he's over there at what's the place? Blaney. And there is a connection between the three. And Kunabulu, or Mount Canobolas, is a initiation site. Holds a lot of significance to the people around here. And I'm learning about the history while I'm here. The history of it, the sad, the wonderful, and all of those things. But that's what people need to understand. And you can't do that by reading in the book, because when I grew up reading about, I learned more about England and America and other parts of the world than my own country, because they didn't want to tell it. And if they were telling it, they weren't telling the truth. So those stories were held by my elders in my community. And as I travel around to other places, I'm learning more and more about our wonderful countries, regardless of where it is. And Wiradjuri is a big nation in itself, but I've travelled to many other places. A lot of friends up around Wilcannia, certainly down around Durton, into Victoria in Mildura. I've been around. My father actually was born in Lismore. So there's a whole other world up there that I have not even began to unearth and understand and unearth from his perspective, that of my father. So yeah, get out, find it if you can. If you can't, we'll try and provide links, no doubt, for those that are assisting Robin and the likes, where people can go to find the correct information. That's about it that I can offer, Michelle.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, I'm just scanning back here because there was a question that piqued my interest before, but I've lost it because things are happening a little bit too fast on the right there. But yeah, I mean, you know, there's a lot of practical things we can do. I found, just my observation, so, you know, I'm a journalist by trade. I spent the vast majority of my life doing that work in radio and television, is that, you know, you can really get in your head with this stuff, and researching and understanding is important. But, you know, as Craig was saying, wherever you are, you know, you can get on country and just sit and just be still and listen and look and don't talk and switch your phone off and just be there. And maybe you won't hear country talking to you first time, but persist, because it will happen. And you have that connection. And I'm not saying that people don't. I know a lot of people do, but particularly in cities, I find, and with people that I've met on my sort of my whole journalistic road, is that people get very in here about reading about stuff. And then they say, oh, I know all about the Parramatta River, but they've never been there, or they haven't gone and they've never sat and listened and looked. So, you know, I think that's vital wherever you are, is to be able to do those things, because once you form a nice solid connection, then that academic work is just going to, in my opinion, is going to flow off that. Your direction's going to be quite clear. You know, would you say I'm sort of on the right track with that, Anne, with, you know, sort of connecting people to launch more of a practical political advocacy sort of work, I guess?
Yeah, no, exactly. You remember I said earlier that it's about collective wisdom, and we all bring our strengths into the dialogue. And so there's room for everyone, because none of us have a monopoly on wisdom. So very, very important that we need all of us, that we need to respect and value each of our way that we see and be in the world. But it is about hearing country. It is about feeling country. And remember, when I came in, I said that the Extinction Rebellion people said that if we are so stupid and we befall our own demise, Mother Earth will right-size herself, because she is so powerful. And I have to keep saying, but she will be lonely without the vibrations of human beings. So we need to walk on country. We need to feel country. We need to hear country in order to love it. So I think the story that we're all sharing, you know, from each of our perspectives, right across the land, from Michelle, from Bruce's amazing work, and, you know, Colin, what he's doing, and just being on another panel before us, we have a belief this is not a job for us. This is our destiny. We are born into this role. We inherit it. It's part of our due inheritance as leaders. And so what we're saying is that come on the journey, believe in it, feel it, be a part of it. Australia belongs to each and every one of you sitting up there looking at us. We're saying, come with us on the journey. We want you to feel your country because you are a part of it. Your DNA is embedded in here. You are now part of the memory. So you all, each of you looking at this, also have a law of obligation to protect our nation, to protect Mother Earth, and see ourselves as global citizens, not just isolated Australians that are at a fast pace, look like we're projecting into total destruction. But we have hope in our heart. We have a coalition of hope that is walking with us, that is standing with us, that have been on this dialogue for these couple of days. So I think, you know, one of the things I learned when I went to America many, many years ago is if you want to be a brave, you have to be brave. So there's a lot out there that will want to stop you from doing it, but it's part of you being fully human, to feel your land, to understand your land, to cry with it, to laugh with it, to breathe with it. Most importantly, to feel it. Thank you.
Yeah, the question that I've found that I scrolled back to that I thought was interesting, but I'm feeling it's been answered, but it's from Lisa Riley, who said a wee while ago, can you please explain the term right size our nation? I've heard several people use it today. Right size our nation. I actually think what you were just talking about, sort of, Anne, and all of this is explaining that, but I don't know, is anyone care to give a bit of a specific definition for that? To right size our nation.
Yeah, I think so. Like, in a way, what we're talking about is earth-centered governance. We need to come back to the principles of law of the land. What are the values? What are the ethics? What are the code of conduct for how we live as civil society, how we nurture each other and support each other? So right now, our world has always been about peace, about harmony, about balance. And what I see in our nation state is that that balance is being toppled, and we need to stop, in a way, continuing to fuel the multinationals and corporations and invest in people and family and community, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. We need to look at what does a just energy transition plan look like? How can we support the way that we need to envisage new economies? We should be fast tracking to go, how do we transition from fossil fuels? Particularly when the big energy companies are saying we are in oil and we are in the energy game, not in the fossil fuel game. So we need to sit around and wake up and say, is this where we're heading to the next elections? What are the big things, ticket items on the agenda? And I think we really need to look at that and wake up and really make our governments come to account. We all need each other. We all need the resources that seem to be trickling out onshore, offshore. And what I'm saying is that part of that is, how do we look at this from a holistic perspective? How do we go back to the definition that land, water, people are intrinsically entwined? Our laws, our public policies are failing. They are failing the environment. They are failing the guardianship and caretakership of our waters, and they are failing our people. So we need to think about, how do we strategize? How do we work together? How do we take the treaty for peace and move that forward in a dialogue that's going to bring us constituted into the framework? Also, one of the things that slipped my mind is next year's the 50-year anniversary for the 10th embassy in Canberra, where leaders before us have stood in unity to take this nation on a different dream. So there's spaces that we need to collect, come to country, get to know each other, celebrate, share, care, love, feel country. So all of these things is to see and be in the world, our nation, a different way. One of the things the last census statistics said was that 60% of Australians still have not met an Indigenous person. Reach out, get to know us. Once you know us, you'll fall in love with us. We will teach you to see and be in the world, your nation, a different way. The other thing that was really encouraging in the last census is that 60% of our demographics is non-Anglo. And this is not to other white people. This is to say our nation is being filled with people who come from multiple worldviews, who have a pluriverse, who see the world in its full plurality. So I'm hoping these senses will change, that we will encourage you to get to know us, be amongst us, feel us, hear us, see us, celebrate with us, because we are rising up and the nation needs to stand with us. They need to stand in unity because our freedom is dependent on their freedom. And we need to create a just world. We need to dream big. We need to dream new dreams. And we need to bring ceremony back into healing land, people, and the planet. Thank you.
Well said, huh? Bruce, can I just ask you, because I don't know a whole lot about this, and hopefully that you'll be able to help us. You've headed up a campaign called Water for Rivers, is that right?
Well, I work with a group called Water for Rivers, and I also run a campaign for Save Our Rivers.
Okay, can you tell us more about that?
Well, I think back in 2019, we've seen our rivers have been dried up, and we've formed we come together with a lot of the water groups, the water campaign groups here in Sydney, and we decided to do a corroboree on the rivers. We wanted to visit the 5 towns, Walgett, Warrwa, Burke, Wilkenya and Menindee. Look, we had 300 plus people on the convoy. Each night we had over 500 people on the banks of those rivers doing those corroborees. And I had people from the different nations. They're doing ceremony, and I think look, it was all about education. It was about bringing people together. Look, one of the main things I think we need to talk about is the balance, and the balance with the spiritual world, with our environment, and I think it's a relationship with each other is very important. How do we treat our neighbours? We're all neighbours now, so we need to start treating each other properly. And I think that's the main source of what our people in the spirit of the land is telling us. And I think it's that acceptance of bringing non-Indigenous people onto our land, just sitting there, feeling the spirit, speaking to them. There's an whole range of stuff that you can, they get educated about, and it's a change of life for most of these people. It's a change of life. It's an experience that they've never forgotten. And I think these things need to happen more often. The more gatherings, I think, need to happen, and I think it's need to be done in a collective. As a collective, if we want to change the environment and the situation here in Australia. Look, I believe that it's going to happen through grassroots people. I don't think we'll get any changes from our leaders unless we get the proper leaders in the right places to make these decisions. But Water for the Rivers, we have to, it's about saving our rivers. It's saving everything that connected to the rivers, the land, and everything that affected, the clearing of the land that affect our rivers. I know that right across the western side of the Great Divide, the clearing of the land has stopped the rains from coming to my country out there, that stopped the water from getting into our rivers. So those are the things we need to sit down and look at and strategize to be able to fix that and talk to the people that are in the right position to make those changes. Look, I'll keep going on to protect our rivers because I know that our rivers are slowly being destroyed. You look here in Sydney as well, you look at the Georges River, that's polluted. How many more of our rivers are going to be polluted? How many more of our rivers are going to be filled with chemicals? How more of our rivers are going to be sold off to the big agriculture, your floodplain harvesting? How long are we going to sit down and let these big corporates dam our waters and stop the waters from coming to us, First Nation people and into our communities? We've got to make a stand. That's why I believe that, save our rivers and Water for the Rivers are very important.
And for anyone who wants to know any more about these campaigns or anything that you can do with what speaks for you, I know there's a lot of stuff that's appeared on chat now as well, but, I've got to say, and it's not a plug for it, but, Facebook is a really good place to go to find a lot of these grassroots campaigns, because someone may not have a website, but they'll most likely have a Facebook page. I'm on Facebook all the time. I have to be for my work. And so it's actually full of riches if you pull it back from a lot of the, you know, the yucky stuff, of which there's plenty. You will find people, you will find organisations, you will find grassroots communities. If they don't have a website, they'll most likely be on Facebook. Bruce, can I ask, any of the campaigns, the work that you're doing, are there Facebook pages or groups around that?
Yeah, look, yeah, Ngiyampaa there. There's a Facebook page. There's my page, and also at the moment we're working on getting foods in our community. So that's, and we're planning on the Ngiyampaa next year. I mean, this year, exact time, this date now in 2019 was when we travelled on the Ngiyampaa. So look, we're planning again next year to do those towns that we missed out on, and we'd like you all to come on that journey and to travel with us, to get out of the city and to get out there on the country.
And there was something that you mentioned before that that is so true, and actually you've talked about it too. You've talked about our songlines. You've mentioned our songlines, but also talked about talking to rivers, the oceans, Mother Earth, and singing. So can either of you talk to us a little bit about singing country?
I'll just say a little bit, and the others can.
No, you're right.
It's so important that, you know, in our country, on my country, you got to speak to the spirit. You got to speak to the land before it speaks back to you. It's that relationship that is so important. That's where our DNA come from. That's where everything, our identity comes from. And I think that's what non-Indigenous people needs to learn. And people that don't know need to learn about that. But it's so important that Mother Earth has also got, you know, there's a spiritual part out there that we also need to engage in. And look, let's get out there. Let's sit down and let's feel it and be a part of that landscape, that spiritual part of it, and be a part of the connection that we have to our land.
You got any thoughts, Anne, just regarding that, about singing country or speaking with country?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because sometimes as humans, we always think we need to have a voice, but country can feel you. You can hear it through non-communication. So songlines are so powerful. They hold the spirit of the country. And it's amazing because right now we've been mapping amazing songlines across the Fitzroy River country. And I was sitting at a lake looking at this amazing place at the end point of the songline. And I looked back in the distance and I could see the Grant Ranges, or in my language, we call it Gundara. And it's the place that my great-grandmother's family were all massacred before she was brought into Ngiyampaa. And I'm sitting there as a 65-year-old woman looking at my country for the first time, seeing this amazing lake and looking right back and seeing where my DNA in a way came from. So it's a magic place. The songlines are alive. They hold memory. They are the maps for traversing the whole of the country. Every songline connected you every which way. So it's about trade, it's about ceremony, it's about diplomatic protocol in terms of when you can travel through country. So songlines are there, they're embedded in the landscape. And, you know, when you get to know them and pull on them and hear them and feel them, it's magic. IATSIS is currently looking at how do they support Aboriginal communities to be able to map their songlines. The total Indigenous cultural intellectual property right belongs to the songholder. And then people give what they want to give to a public thing. But there are so many songlines that need to be mapped while we have the singers. And so we're fast tracking as many songlines as we can map across the country, from the top of the catchment to the bottom, from across into the desert and all these amazing places. And yeah, when you sit there and evoke the memory and sing to country, country can hear you and feel you, and it sings back to you. It's magic. It's real. It's there in our landscape. Come with us and we'll share it with you. Thank you.
Can I just give you an example, Michelle? Look, my family, my father's come off the line of the rainmakers. The rainmakers people are connected not just to northern New South Wales. The songline goes up through the desert parts of New Central Australia and goes up to hand country, up to Fitzroy. That's where our songline actually runs. So we're connected through that spirit and through that songline, Even though we're not living up there, we're connected in that way. And that's how our songline right across this big continent that connects all the 500 plus nations up.
Sounds like we've got a bit of singing to do at the tent embassy next year when we wake up all the snakes.
Yeah.
So I think it's very powerful. It's very, very powerful. I hope, many of you will come on that journey, because we have a word in my language called bugaragara. Bugaragara means the past, the present, and the future, fused into this moment in time in which we must act. So it's beautiful. Get to know Indigenous people. Come with us. Be part of the journey. Your life will be totally transformed if you invest and be brave and reach out and extend this friendship that we are extending to you. We love this country. You love the country. You're part of it. Feel it, hear it, see it. And most of all, sit quietly with it, particularly if you're in very, very busy places, like sitting in the middle of Melbourne or Adelaide or Sydney. Just sit quiet. The country will hear you. You can talk to it quietly. The songlines are alive. They are still there in the landscape. I also want to give a plug for a website that has been set up called Regenerative Songlines. So we as Indigenous leaders are mapping these songlines. We are putting them out there for you to feel it and hear it and see it and be a part of it. So Regenerative Songline, I haven't put the website up, but you all speak English, so I know you can spell it. But get to know that Regenerative Songline, be part of us. You could not get anything more than friendship from us, goodwill, and a spirit of cooperation and collaboration as we, as citizens, not the government, not governance, we right-size our nation. We stand together in solidarity. We as fellow Australians care about each other, and that Black lives do matter in our country.
Yes, absolutely. Michelle, I just want to add that, a lot of people, they get a bit frightened, Aboriginal people get a bit frightened about thinking that they have to give up something to embrace, understanding and getting to know Aboriginal people and the culture. We're not asking you to give up anything. We're actually asking you to open your heart and your mind and embrace what's around you, what's always been around you, and you'll actually not give up something, but you will take on so much more, so much more as a result of it. Now, an example of a friend of mine who's been a farmer all his life, grew up on the land, all he knew was farming. And he said, come out to and we're both musicians. So I play drums, he plays guitar. I couldn't sing to save my life, but he's all right. I go out to his property, which he no longer owns. He's sold the property. But I go out there and I start showing him some things. And he was a bit afraid. Craig, I don't know whether I should show you this. I said, why? He said, oh, I'm afraid. Afraid of what? He said, that you might come and take our land away. Get out of here. I said, how the hell is that going to happen? Legislative doesn't allow us to do it. We want to teach you what those things, like it could be a canoe tree or a carb tree. I said, we need to tell you what the significance of those things are. And as a result of him learning those things, all of a sudden, the things that he was fearful of all his life, he's now embracing, and he looks at them in a different way. He said, you know what, Craig? And he was telling me a story when he was kids. They had a pet emu. This wasn't farmed or locked up or anything, free to roam around anywhere. But when they used to go and swim in the river at the back of their place, the emu would go into the river and swim with them. And they used to call the emu a certain name. They just thought it was a name that they'd made up. I said, that's the Wiradjuri name for emu. And he said, get out of here. He said, here I am. I said, so look, I'm just making you aware of things that are in your a part of your life. You knew about them, but you just didn't understand them. And so he hasn't given up anything. He's still got all of his wonderful memories, but now he's embraced Aboriginal culture simply by opening his heart and his mind. And now he wants to just learn as much as he possibly can And he's actually switching the other way. He said, Craig, you know what? I said, I'm dead set against all of this land clearing. I said, but, you know, funny you say that you did that when you were young. He said, I'm against it now. So, you know, for those that are looking and a bit mindful about they're giving up something, you're not. You're going to learn far much more and embrace far much more than you ever imagined, simply by coming on this journey with us, opening your heart, your mind, and taking it all in.
And I think maybe if it's okay, with a caveat with that as well, is that sometimes when you go on the journey with Aboriginal people, with Torres Strait Islander people, there will be times when there are some things that you may not know as a non-Indigenous person, and you need to be okay with that too. You know, if an elder says, no, Bob, you know, that's a level of whatever, that's only for someone who's initiated or whatever, is being okay with that and just letting that be. Because if you do, then what is able to be shared, which is so much, can be shared and will be shared, you know. But I've found, you know, sort of done a lot of work in the Canadian experience for Aboriginal and First Nations peoples in Canada, and a lot of their experience is so similar to ours in terms of culture, their relationship with earth, and what has happened with stolen generations, you know, with all of that. And a friend of mine who's a journalist, and he did a lot of work in this area, and he said, you mainly hear about First Nations Canadians when they're drumming, dancing, or dead, you know, and that's not an, you know, Aboriginal experience, but that's the thing, is that people wanted to know about First Nations Canadian. They wanted to know about all the drumming and all the wonderful, you know, the corroboree, painting up, all this sort of stuff. But when it comes down to the practical stuff, you know, the work is amazing work, but it's going to be hard work. It is hard work, you know, and there's going to be times when you're going to cry and you're going to be angry and all that sort of thing. But if you do what, you know, the three people here today are telling you to do, is have your relationship with country wherever you happen to be. You can still have a relationship with country. That's going to solidify you, ground you. It's going to bolster you when that work is tough, because it is tough work. I mean, you know, you speak so beautifully, Anne, but, you know, I can only imagine the very, very hard work that you have put in, not only at a computer, but also on country too. Isn't that nice?
Silence.
It is.
Beautiful.
If there's one last thing I'd like to just offer, and I'm not sure whether we're anywhere near finishing, is in all of my experience, and you fellas would probably know this too, Aboriginal people have always been an afterthought when it comes to issues, and especially with water. And I'll speak certainly about my experiences at home. You know, there's a group of people that are supposedly looking after the interests of water, either from irrigators or environmentalists and that sort of stuff, that are worried about water. And when they're having difficulties trying to articulate their message and get it across, all of a sudden they say, oh, we haven't talked to the Aboriginal people, we need to go to them. And I got a phone call that said, Craig, you mind if we get you to come on board and be a part of the program? I said, right, let me ask this question. At what stage are you at with the designing or this particular report? They said, oh, it's all about finished. We just want you to look and see if you're happy with it. I said, mate, I'm going to respectfully tell you to piss off. I said, if you want me to get involved in it, or my people to be involved for my community, you involve us at the very get-go. Don't leave us and have us as an afterthought. You want to pull out the Aboriginal card to try and get a message across. We're better than that. We're more than that. And if that's all you think that we are, then you better go. Don't ring me. Don't bring. And this is the other thing. We got to make sure that Aboriginal people are no longer the afterthought when it comes to pieces of legislation, raising issues and concerns about what's happening to our lands and in particular our waters, that we're involved in, informed from the very get-go. The United Nations process is pre-prior and informed consent. A lot of it's always been, we've designed it, we need your endorsement. Well, it's not good enough anymore. You want us, involve us from the get-go, and we like to drive those things because we got a lot of input and a lot of ideas that will marry with or suit a lot of processes that are out there and bring a lot of people along for the journey. And again, I'll go back to what I said at the very get-go. It alarms me, not you, brother Bruce, and certainly our news have been raising the issue, but it seems the conversation about the rivers have gone quiet and they'll only wait until they go dry again before they all jump up in arms. But we need to make sure if there's a means and a way, brother Bruce, Sister Anne, that we can keep the conversation going so that our rivers, our waterways and our lands are not left till something terrible happens to them, and then we got to all get up in arms. How do we keep that conversation going? That's as much for me, so I can be involved in that process, as it is about those that are had the privilege of listening in to those lovely fellow guest speakers that I've been had the privilege of sharing the stage with today, or the screen.
Thanks, Craig. Look, we're finishing up at 5 o'clock, and we can't go past 5, I'm told. So, and I can see, things sort of, we could probably yarn quite a bit longer. So I want to stop down for a moment, firstly, because there's something special that we'd like to share with everybody before we go, and just so we've got maybe a bit of time for yarning at the end. So when we're talking about sitting with Mother Earth, sitting with the river, listening, etc., but also, there's a lot of beautiful wisdom that can come from listening to people who are able to First Nations people who are able to sing and to basically make those sounds that come from their own relationship with Mother Earth. So Anne has another great video that we'd love to play by a band, Anne, called Kalaji. Yeah.
It's that actually my son who narrated the film. He's just produced his first album and he's out there in the big screen, but I won't say that name. It's Kalaji, my son Mark, and he is a beautiful songmaker, and many of these songlines along the river have been gifted to him because he's the next law carrier with another younger man in his 40s. So our young people are having the transmission of the songlines. They're taking it and transforming it into contemporary ways to share music. People say to me, what does he play? And I say he plays a computer, but he's just produced his first album. I think it's a very beautiful piece of work to go out with, and watch this space. He's doing amazing things. So it was a chance to just also not go, oh, what does mum need? But give him a voice, because he's he's got his own voice, and young people are making music and transforming the songlines into contemporary music with the permission of our elders and our river. So I hope you enjoy the piece and watch the space, watch for his next album. And he's done great work under Bunalori and they love each other. So I hope this is something you will all treasure.
That's Night River, Kalaji. So and Poelina's very talented son. Wow. Wow. That was huge. Any thoughts, fellas?
I loved it. It brought me forward and closer to the screen from the get-go. And I think whenever it does that to you, you know, you've got something that's special. So you should be so very proud, eh?
Yeah, I think Michelle, it's something that we're bringing to the wider audience that they're missing. They're missing the message here. It's bringing that message forward now. The spirit is now starting to rise up from the river, from the people, from everyone, First Nation. I think that's why it's so powerful, and that's why, you know, it's so engaging and stuff like that.
And speaking through young people too. And how does it, I know you're familiar with this, how does it make you feel seeing it in this context here today?
Yeah, no, I think it's important that we give our young people room to breathe and be creative and innovative. And if we've given them the right values and the ethics, and they've grown up on country with country, they can produce the magic because country is standing with them. So definitely a powerful piece of work. And yeah, no, Mark's out there in the big world as well. I mean, he's a very well-known Australian actor. So let's just sort of see it. It won't be under Gulladji, it's under Mark Cole Smith with no hyphen. But yeah, he's out there, he's doing amazing stuff. Watch this space. He's doing the prequel to Mystery Road coming up soon. So these young people, they have a way of connecting because they are connected to world culture. And so by bringing our ancient wisdom and giving them the permission to be creative but respectful, they can provide profound pieces of work. So watch out for Gulladji. The album is just to be soon to be released. It's very, very beautiful. He has music out there on those things that young people know about that I don't know about, but it's very, very beautiful. Yeah, so you know, he's doing great things, and I think it's about giving our young people the freedom to be creative through respect. So his name is Mark Colesmith. I'm always giving the voice of the river, but not my son. So Mark's out there. He's doing amazing things. We are doing this journey together. We are opening up potential, and yeah, it's just lovely. I never get tired of seeing his work and the magic of country that opens up to allow them to explore and reach their full potential as human beings. Thank you.
Oh, am I talking now? Yeah. The spelling for Gulladji is in the chat window. We're getting to the point of sort of winding up. In terms of anyone who's been watching this panel today, please don't sort of disappear, because there's something that I'd like to ask you all to do in a moment. But in the meantime, I wouldn't mind. I'll just quickly nip around the three deadly people here just for some final words. If you have anything that you care to leave people with. Can I start with you, Craig?
I guess probably just picking up on that message, what Anne just said there is very important, is there'll be people from various age groups that non-Indigenous people will be able to connect to through and to. There'll be those that into that field or that area of the arts, whatever form of arts that may be. There'll be others that just like to sit down and listen to the very passionate people like Sir Bruce and others that would, you know, want to learn more, want to know more, want to be able to do more. So it's very encouraging, I guess, that we've got pretty much all of it covered. We've got the academics, the people that just consider themselves grassroots people, although I think we're all grassroots people that are able to connect and relate to those that want to reach out and understand and learn. There's enough people around that can be able to do that. So all they need to do is just reach out, find a way. Hopefully there's links will be made available, Michelle, through this forum, how they might be able to do it. I know both Anne and Bruce had their website details or Facebook details that have been forwarded around. I know there's been Nathan Moran from the Metropolitan Land Council has put his hand up to say, look, by all means, come to us. But, you know, there's just a number of people. I don't have anything. I just do my own thing. And I try and fly under the radar, so to speak. So I don't have I'm not on Facebook. I do share my photos on Instagram. But that's about as much as I do. I tend to keep a lot of my comments close to my chest until I need to speak from the heart. So all I just like to say, thank you to everyone that's invited me to participate. Thank you to my fellow guest presenters there, Brother Bruce and Sister Anne. I'm in awe of you both, and I'll be certainly looking out for those dates and where the gatherings that you talk about, Bruce, on the river, and certainly for you, Anne, up there in Sydney. If you know situations open up where we're not in lockdown and things become a lot better with COVID, that we're able to participate and go to those things. And I'm still learning about my own culture. So I want to say in my grandmother's lingo with Ngiyampaa, Yamagara Bija.
Okay, thank you, Craig. We've got 5 minutes before we have to go out, so I do need a few minutes for the people viewing the panel. So, Bruce, have you got any final words you just want to?
Look, just quick. We're in a time in history where Mother Earth is crying out. We're in a time in history where our spirits are crying out. Look, Mother Earth has got a family right across this great continent, right across the world, right across this planet. Those families are going to come with gifts, because those families all have a gift to contribute. Let's bring our gifts and let's contribute. Thank you, everyone. Yalu.
Yalu. Anne, any final words from you?
Yeah, we currently have the Uluru Statement, which is a gift from the heart. And what I'm saying is that we now have the framework, or a framework for dialogue that Pat Anderson has submitted. So I believe that we have a framework for building a coalition of trust and respect. I hope that we can all dream the new dream for our nation collectively. We come from all different parts of this nation. We stand in solidarity with each of us. Our freedom is very much dependent on your freedom. And I want to say that this has been a wonderful opportunity. Love your rivers, love our rivers, care for them. Not only do they have the right to life, they have the right to live and flow. So thank you all. Get to know your place, get to know your country, feel it. We share it, we give it as a gift of peace and reconciliation and truth telling. So many of you that I've seen your faces today, I've flicked through and I've gone like 5 pages. Many of you are elderly. Many of you are senior. Many of you have lived a life and a journey of being an Australian person in this country. Get to know us, get to love us, get to walk with us. And today, go and tell 10 more people why we need to get on this journey together. Thank you for your love. Please join our website on the 26th of September. I'm working at a global level as well in terms of citizen mobilisation of looking at a global water law. So let's do that. Let's give our rivers the right to live and breathe. Thank you.
Everyone, we'd love if you would help us to finish up and celebrate this yarning that we've had this afternoon by waving. And, you know, there's a couple of things that we wouldn't mind if you call out. It's the old, you know, the version of cheese for a photo, voice, treaty, truth, Uluru. So please feel free. Everyone who's watching, please turn on your microphones. Turn on your video.
Wonderful.
And you can go and you can go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go into gallery
Thank
view.
you. Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Treaty truth with you.
Treaty truth.
Treaty truth.
Treaty truth.
Treaty truth.
Keep
You. Walk together in truth.
treaty truth.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody. And thank you to our panelists. Thank you
God
for all
bless.
sharing your time and sharing space with us today. And we have another talk in an hour if you're interested.
Okay.
Right? So
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Bruce, thank you, Colin. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you for the message of peace.
Thank you.